Hello everyone, and here we are on True Crime Tuesday. It is the last day in my 3-part series of methamphetamine and child abuse or babies, whatever way you wanted to put it. The 3 cases that I studied that were so completely like each other. I took a small break there for Ryan Whitaker, and now I'm back with the last part of it. So today we are going to talk about Sterling Koehn. I hope I'm saying that right. It's kind of a tricky last name. He was 4 months old and he was all the way in Iowa. So let's talk about him. So without further ado, let's get spooky. Actually, I found it pretty interesting. I lit my final candle today and I couldn't really find any other candles in the house except one that I got from Bed Bath & Body Works. Yeah, it is. And it had 3 wicks in it. I'm sure you guys have all gotten those candles, but I thought it was pretty ironic that the last candle that I have has 3 wicks in it because I've talked about 3 children. So anyway, I digress. Let's keep going. So let's talk about this new case. This case actually made headlines because of some pretty gruesome details about the case. I feel very numb about everything I've learned when I jumped into the similarities of the cases. So it's kind of weird because I thought for sure like this last day I would be extremely emotional and upset, but I feel very numb to what I don't understand it personally. But we'll talk about my issues with what happened with the case. On the 30th of August 2017, there was a phone call made into dispatch, Chickasaw County in Iowa, and the 911 caller was recorded talking to the father of a child, and he basically said that he went into the bedroom to check on his child, and when he went to go see him, that he was gone. Those were his exact words. I went to go see him and he was gone. I guess it must have been SIDS or something like that. So they immediately EMS to the house. The EMS gets there, goes in, checks in for the baby, the 4-month-old baby, Sterling Koehn, and the EMS checks the baby out and decides that, there can be nothing that can be done, but law enforcement needs to be called. So the EMS gets there and decides that she needs to call law enforcement. And here is the reason why she needed to call law enforcement. When she went into the apartment, she was guided into a small apartment with 1 bedroom. No, it had 2 bedrooms. And the baby was in a smaller bedroom, and on the wall was it was a quilt of some sort, a thicker blanket than normal. So the window was being blocked by a blanket instead of having regular curtains. And the baby's electric swing was facing the corner of the wall, and that's what it was sleeping in. And the EMS noticed that the baby looked like it had been there for quite some time. She said that the baby had a strong scent of urine, that the blanket underneath was drenched in urine. There was 1 bottle in the room and it had a crusted formula in it. So these wax melts are underneath the baby, opened up and laying underneath them, which caught my attention immediately because why would you have wax melts underneath a baby? I'm guessing because you can smell decomposition taking place and dead bodies smell very bad. So for that baby to have just died immediately and it to have a smell doesn't really make sense. And the investigation started to take place. I don't know when they decided that they were going to make arrests or whatever, but the father, Zach Koehn, he was actually arrested before the mother of the child, Cheyanne Harris, and the situations around these two parents just were very bizarre, I guess. So Cheyanne Harris was 21 years old. Zachery Koehn was, I believe, 29 or 30. What immediately caught my attention is that I noticed that Cheyanne had been with Zachary since she was around 16 or 15 years old. So that right there was kind of crazy. Zachary was 8 years older than Cheyanne. So if he was with her when she was 16 years old, that means he had to have been 24 when she was 16. Wouldn't that be a little odd for you? I understand when you're 21 and 29, that's okay, it's completely legal. But 16 and 24, I don't know. It sounds weird. As we dive more into the case, we find out that the couple did meth and that both the parents had actually been on meth when the police had been called to the apartment. This case just is, it's really bleak. One thing that really was interesting to me is that when EMS was called to the scene of the crime, when they walked into the apartment, there was no emotions from the parents. Also, Cheyanne Harris and Zachery Koehn had another child. The child was 2 years old. They referred to the child as her name as being Nala. Nala was, I guess they described, chunky and very well fed, very well taken care of. She was dressed in a fancy Easter dress. So the child was completely dressed. And something to make note of is that when there is one child that's neglected, another one could be taken care of very well. It seems like that if there were multiple children in a household, that both children would be abused. But that's not always the case. For some reason, one child seems to attract the attention of the abuse, and the other children go unhurt. So something that I found out was that Zachary thought that Sterling was not his child. And it actually comes out in the court case that he thought that, but they did a paternity test and they went ahead and they found out that that was his child. The reason why he thought that that wasn't his child is because the baby had blue eyes. I don't know why that would make you think that that wasn't your child. Most newborns do have blue eyes, and usually they change colors, but I guess Sterling had bright, super bright blue eyes. And for whatever reason, he said he thought that that child was not his. So I think that Cheyanne Harris really did not want to have the baby, and she just wanted to have her and Nala, and she didn't pay attention to the baby. The reason why this is such a gruesome case is because the baby actually, the coroner's report said that the baby actually sat in that swing for 7 to 14 days. 7 being the low end, 14 being the highest, maybe even longer, I guess. But the reason why they said that is because the baby actually succumbed to E. coli poisoning from a diaper rash. And you gotta wonder how long a baby is sitting in their diaper to get that bad of a diaper rash that they can actually die from it. And the other thing that they noticed was there were maggots that were in the diaper, and they actually called in a insect specialist to talk about the larvae and the pupa and all this crazy, disgusting stuff that I really can't believe I sat there and listened to. But it took 1 day for the insects to get to the diaper. It took a couple days for them to lay the pupa, and it took a certain amount of time for them to actually hatch and then move to another part of the body, which all was found on Sterling Koehn. And they described the child's death extremely excruciating. It was a very slow death. It was a very sad death. The baby had not been picked up, held, or fed within 7 to 14 days. It literally sat in this swing, faced the corner, and slowly died. starving and not being touched, no affection, and sitting in its own filth. No diaper changes for 7 to 14 days. I guess when the baby was taken to the coroners, that it weighed 7 pounds. It was almost a half a pound lighter than it was when it was first born. And there are some other really crazy details to be noted too. Like, as the case went on, you notice that, well, the first thing I noticed was that Zachery Koehn and Cheyanne Harris actually had 2 different trials. They were not put together, which is good, but there has to be a reason for that. While Cheyanne Harris's trial was happening, the best friend to Zachery Koehn actually gets called to the stand, and you can see Cheyanne Harris like getting really, really upset and looking very nervous, and they started to ask questions. His name was Jordan. And Jordan states that he never even knew that there was a baby in the house. And he went to the house a couple times. And he went to the house because he did meth with the father and the mother. So he went to the house to do meth with the father and the mother of the child. And he never saw the baby. He never heard the baby. He said that Cheyanne never left the room to play with the baby, feed the baby, or anything. And now what's even crazier is once they take Zachary into custody, it comes out that Jordan, Zachary's best friend, is actually sleeping with Cheyanne Harris, and they've been having an affair for quite some time. And that is something that Zachary mentioned. The reason why he thought Sterling wasn't his baby is that because he said something about how Cheyanne had slept with the person that provided them methamphetamine, and that's the reason why. This case is just really, it's just really pointless, and it's really horrible, and I just don't understand, because you could have just gave the 4-month-old baby to somebody to watch. But I've said that in multiple different cases, and for some reason the mother didn't do it. Zachary said that in the morning that day, when Zachary went to go check on the baby and said he had to call the police because Sterling was dead, that Cheyanne basically said, you know, maybe we should just take Nala and leave. And he said, no way, I'm not going to do that. And when he was asked by the prosecution why he didn't make sure that Sterling wasn't fed or taken care of, he said that he had put his trust in the wrong person's hand, basically talking about Cheyanne. Anyway, they go through the whole entire case, and it's just a really senseless trial. And at the end, they both find both parents guilty, life without parole, and they're taken off to prison. I don't know what to say about this case in any way, shape, or form. Later on, while Cheyanne's in prison, there is an actual movie show, like a show that goes in there to actually film, and they decide, oh, it's called Life with Lifers. And they go in there and they talk to different people who have life without parole. And Cheyanne Harris is actually picked out to be one of the people that talk about, you know, how they're doing. And the interviewing person says, you know, why are you here? And Cheyanne says, because I was not a good mother while I was on meth. And, you know, Cheyanne's basically being bullied by the people in prison because they're like really mad that that's why she's in prison. And yeah, I guess like even while she's walking down the hallway, one of the people that is in prison with Cheyanne is like, do you know why she's here? Well, obviously you do if you're here like interviewing her at all. And the interview person looks into the case and she says it's one of the most brutal cases that she's ever seen before. I looked at Cheyanne's life, because you can actually find her Facebook still up, and I just feel like from the beginning that this girl had no chance. It just seemed kind of crazy that her mother wouldn't care that she was dating somebody 9 years older than her when she was 16 years old. Zachary admitted that he's the one who introduced methamphetamine to Cheyanne. I don't think she had enough support. I don't think she knew what she was doing. What's really crazy is that Zachary had a good job as a trucker. He actually made $45,000 a year. So not having enough money or not having the funds to buy food, that really wasn't part of it. Even though it later came out that Cheyanne and baby Sterling were on WIC. There's no sense in this case. So, they interviewed the EMS, who actually seems the most upset about the fact that this baby died. She can't even talk on the stand without crying and shaking, and it's just a senseless death. I feel like meth did play a big role in this case, but I do feel like the mother knew what she was doing. I really do. I don't think that it was just... I can't really say how I feel about this case. It just is... It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, where was the mom of Cheyanne Harris when all of this was happening? It occurred that she actually watched Sterling and Nala more than once. Like, how could she not have noticed that this was going on? So, and they interview Cheyanne's mother, and she basically talks about how much she loves babies and how she wishes she could have taken care of her. And it just is kind of, I don't know, there's stuff that wasn't said. That's what I think. I think that this child had a lot going along with her. I think this child had a lot going on with her that wasn't talked about, because it just seems like a lot of stuff is missing. Like, you could just tell from her Facebook that, she didn't have a lot of supervision as a teenager. And I don't want to say that's the reason why that this happened to this baby. I just think that she was a young girl dating an older man, and she ended up on drugs and with all this responsibility that she was not ready for. And neglect happened. I really hate this case. I hate the other two cases. I would have to say, out of all, I can't say that this one's the most brutal, because Courtney Bell and the McNabb baby, that was brutal. Jessica Groves and Daniel Groves, that was brutal. And this one just was very, like, there was not a care in the world for this baby. The baby literally died in the same house, not being touched, not being loved, not being taken care of. Died because Zach thought that wasn't his baby. Died because Cheyanne was strung out on meth and could care less about the baby. And just, can you imagine that little tiny baby sitting in a swing for 7 to 14 days, being eaten alive by maggots, not being taken care of? And yeah, that's what happened to this baby. So this is my third case, and I'd like to say that I came upon some knowledge about this, but it was just senseless and horrible. And I guess I'm just basically saying that by studying cases like this, that, there were people that came in and babysat Sterling and said that Sterling looked underweight. Nobody called social services on this baby. So if you see something like this, and a lot of people disagree with me, just call. Please, just call, because this really was a senseless death. And I can't even imagine how many people would have loved to have this beautiful baby, 4 months old. And I mean, this baby was very unwanted, and it just, I don't know, I can't make any sense of it. So I hope you enjoyed learning about Sterling Koehn. I'm sorry if I'm kind of numb. This was a really hard rabbit hole to dive down, and after the third case and studying all these cases, I felt very, I wouldn't say that I didn't feel extremely upset about Sterling, because I am extremely upset, but I guess shock. numb about the fact that this could happen. And nobody helped this child. Like, it's crazy. So if you liked my channel, please subscribe. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. I hope you found it an interesting case. I thought it was really intense learning about the different stages of maggots on the body. And I wish it wouldn't have been of a 4-month-old baby that I had to learn that from. But, we do the best that we can. Okay, everybody. Thank you for listening to my story. As always, stay spooky and stay safe.